Chapter 4. First Blood. She found the commotion in the outer ward. She had not run. Running attracted attention and she had no intention of being intercepted and sent back to her corridor before she learned anything. She walked instead, quickly, with purpose, the way she had learned to move through the Ember Throne when she needed to be somewhere she had not been invited. Purposeful movement read as authorized movement. It worked in human courts. She was gambling it worked here. It worked. The Sylvain she passed were too focused on the alarm to question why the human hostage was descending the eastern stairwell with her chin up and her expression composed. She reached the outer ward gallery, an elevated walkway that ran along the inner face of the citadel wall, just as the gates opened. They brought the intruder in on foot, flanked by 4 border guards, and Saoirse looked down from the gallery and felt the bottom drop out of her carefully maintained composure. It was Maren. Maren, who was supposed to be at the Ember Throne. Maren, who had wept when Saoirse left and been kissed on the forehead and told to stay. Maren, who was 22 years old and had no business inside the Thornwood, who looked exhausted and frightened and muddy from what must have been days of hard travel and who was being handled, not unkindly, but firmly, by guards twice her size. And who, Saoirse could see from here, was injured. Her left arm was held against her body at the particular careful angle of someone with cracked or broken ribs. Her temple had dried blood on it. She had not incurred these injuries crossing the forest. Saoirse was moving before she had consciously decided to move. She took the gallery stairs at speed, crossed the ward yard, and put herself between Maren and the nearest guard with a fluency that surprised even herself. "Release her," she said, in the tone she had spent 24 years practicing, not loud, not pleading, the precise register of someone who considers compliance a foregone conclusion. The guards looked at her, then past her. She turned. Erevan had come through the gate behind the group. He stopped when he saw her, and for one fraction of a second, very small, there and gone, something crossed his face that was not the controlled neutrality she'd catalogued. Something with heat in it. Then it was gone and he was just the general again, and he looked at her standing between the guards and Maren and said, with extraordinary evenness, "I told you to stay in the corridor." "You told me not to leave it," she said. "I made a judgment call about timelines. This is my handmaiden. She's hurt." What happened to her? A beat. He looked at Maren, who had gone very still in the way of someone trying to make herself small enough to be overlooked, which Saoirse recognized as a survival mechanism she had taught her. "She was found at the outer ward boundary," Erevan said. "The injuries were already present. She sustained them before crossing into Thornwood territory. She was attacked. Or she fell." "She didn't fall." Saoirse turned to Maren, kept her voice even, steady, the voice that meant "I'm here, you're safe now, you can speak." "Maren, who did this?" Maren's eyes, dark brown, red-rimmed, exhausted, found hers and held them with a desperation that was trying very hard not to collapse into relief. "They came the night after you left," she said. Her voice was stripped raw. "2 of them. They wanted the letters. The ones you kept in the locked chest, the correspondence. I told them there were no letters and one of them," she stopped. Pressed her lips together. "It doesn't matter. I got away. I took what I could and I ran." Saoirse registered all of this and kept her face clean. "What did you take?" Maren looked at her steadily. "What you would have wanted me to take." "She's carrying something." Saoirse glanced at the guards, at Erevan, at the careful way Maren was holding herself, not just the ribs, the whole posture, the particular stillness of someone with something concealed. "She needs a physician," Saoirse said, turning back to Erevan. "Immediately. She'll be seen to," he said. "After she's been questioned. She's been questioned in the field, she's been running for days, and she has broken ribs. The questioning can wait 2 hours for the physician." She held his gaze, didn't blink. "Or you can tell me what you need to know and I'll ask her." Something in the air between them went taut. She was aware of Thessaly somewhere to her left, watching this exchange with the focused interest of someone at a very good play. The guards were watching too. Even Marin was watching. Erevan looked at her for a long, measuring moment. Then, 2 hours, he said. Thessaly, find the physician. He looked at Saoirse. My study. When she's been seen to. He turned and walked away. Saoirse let the breath out slowly through her nose and turned back to Marin, who looked at her with the expression of someone who has just watched something happen and is not entirely sure what it was. I'm all right, Marin said, quietly, just for her. I know you are, Saoirse said. She put her hand on her arm, gently, careful of the ribs, and kept her voice low. What did you take from the chest? Marin's eyes were steady. A letter, sealed, not in your hand. Who wrote it? A pause. It was addressed to you, Marin said. In your mother's hand. The physician was a Sylvain elder called Arath who looked at Marin with the same quality of total attention every Sylvain seemed to bring to things and proceeded to treat her with a brisk competence that required no language. Sylvain healing had a component that Saoirse had read about in passing and now witnessed directly. A low-frequency hum that the healer produced in their chest, barely audible, that seemed to do something to the tissue at the site of injury, accelerating, she thought, some natural process, rather than replacing it. Marin bore this with considerable fortitude and only one very stifled noise when the ribs were addressed. Saoirse sat beside her and held her hand and thought about a letter in her mother's handwriting that had been locked in a chest at the Ember Throne for an unknown number of years, and about the 2 people who had broken into Marin's room looking for correspondence, and about the fact that someone had known to look. Caden, their father, or someone operating on instructions from one or both of them, or someone else entirely, which was the possibility she kept returning to because it was the one she knew least about and therefore the one most likely to kill her. When Arath finished and Marin was pale but steady and breathing more evenly, Saoirse leaned close and said, "Where is it?" Marin reached into the inner lining of her coat, sewn in, Saoirse recognized the seam, and drew out a folded square of paper, old and slightly yellowed, sealed with plain wax, no crest. She held it out. Saoirse took it, her name, on the outside, in her mother's hand. She had seen that handwriting in exactly 2 places, a recipe book left in the kitchens, and the back of a small painting of a coastal bay that had hung in her room since childhood. She knew the shape of those letters the way she knew the shape of her own face. She turned the letter over. The wax seal was unbroken. Her mother had been dead for 18 years. She folded the letter and put it inside her own collar, against her sternum, beside the pendant. Later, when she was alone, when she had the privacy to be whatever she was going to be when she read it. Good, she said, to Marin. You did well. Rest now. Erevan was at his desk when she entered. He looked up, read her face, all of it, she suspected, though he read it without comment, and gestured to the chair. She sat. She told him everything Marin had said, plainly and completely. She did not mention the letter. She was not sure why she didn't mention it, only that it felt like a thing that needed to stay hers for a few more hours, needed to be known by her before it was known by anyone else. He listened without interrupting, which she had come to understand was how he always listened, full attention, nothing wasted. Your brother, he said, when she finished. Or my father, or someone with access to either of them. She paused. The letters they were looking for. I don't keep correspondence in locked chests. I keep correspondence in plain view or I destroy it. There's nothing in a locked chest worth protecting unless it was put there by someone else. You didn't know it was there. I had a locked chest in my room that I inherited when my rooms were reassigned 7 years ago. I never opened it. I assumed it was empty. She kept her voice level. Someone put something in it and didn't tell me. 7 years ago, or 20 years ago, or any time in between. Your mother. The word landed. She let it land. Possibly. He studied her. That careful, comprehensive look that she was still learning to be read by, still learning not to brace against. You're not telling me something, he said. She met his eyes. I'm telling you everything relevant to the investigation. A pause. His eyes went a shade darker, not anger, Something more complicated than that. He was deciding, she could see him deciding, whether to push. Whether the thing she was not telling him was his to know. "All right," he said, finally. She breathed. "The two who attacked your handmaiden," he said, moving on with the precision of someone who has chosen to trust a thing and is not going to undermine that choice by revisiting it. "Describe what she described to me. Their clothing, their manner. She said they wore no livery. Dark traveling clothes, no insignia. One was tall, one was not. Both spoke with the flat accent of the capital." She paused. "She said the tall one knew the lock mechanism on the chest. Specifically." Without looking for it, Erevan went still. "Which means they'd been in that room before," Saoirse said. "Or they had a very precise description of it. Or they had a design document," Erevan said quietly. "A floor plan." She looked at him. He was looking at something past her left shoulder. That inward look of a man accessing a memory he didn't expect to need. "What floor plans?" she said. "When the hostage exchange was agreed," he said slowly, "both sides were required to provide the other with accommodation details. Schematics, to ensure the quarters met the standards set in the original clause." He paused. "Your room at the Ember Throne was submitted to us. And your equivalents were submitted to the human court." "Yes." The shape of it arrived fully formed, ugly and elegant at once. "So whoever attacked Marin had access to the schematics your side sent to my father's court," she said. "Which means either it was my father's court, or someone who got inside my father's court specifically to access Sylvain documentation. There is a third option," Erevan said. She waited. "The schematics were prepared on our side before being sent," he said. "Someone here could have noted the details of your old room before the document left the Citadel." The person inside the Citadel, the one who had left Volume 1 in her quarters. The one he was protecting. She watched his face. He was watching hers. They were both, she realized, doing the same thing, holding each other's gaze and trying to read exactly how much the other one knew without showing how much they themselves knew, and it was exhausting and it was necessary and it was something else too, underneath all the strategy, something she was not going to name. "What is your theory," she said, "about who is behind all of this? Not your evidence. Your theory." A long pause. "I think," he said slowly, as though choosing each word from a very limited supply, "that someone has been planning this for a very long time. Longer than the tree was dying. Longer than the hostage clause. I think the target has always been the Covenant, either its destruction or its renegotiation. And I think the reason they needed you here is not the resealing." He paused. "I think they need your blood for something else. Something the original texts don't describe. Something the archivist is still translating." The silence stretched. "How long has the archivist been translating?" She said. 3 months. "The tree has been dead for 3 weeks. Yes." She felt it then, the full cold weight of how much had been in motion before she knew any of it existed. Someone told the archivist to look 3 months ago. An anonymous communication, left in the archive, from inside the Citadel. Yes. She stood. She needed to stand. She moved to the window, the same western-facing window he'd stood at last night watching her light. She was briefly, viscerally aware of this, and looked out at the thornwood canopy, vast and silver-green and breathing. "The person you're protecting," she said, to the window. "Are they in danger?" Behind her, a silence that had weight. "I thought I was protecting them from consequences," Erevan said. His voice was quiet, lower than usual. "I am beginning to think I have been protecting them from accountability." A pause. "Those are not the same thing." She turned. He was looking at her with an expression she had not seen on him yet. Not the controlled neutrality, not the soldier's focus, not the flicker of something unguarded she'd catalogued and kept. This was older than all of those. This was a man confronting something he had believed for a long time and finding the shape of it subtly, irreparably wrong. She wanted to go to him. The impulse arrived clean and immediate and she stood very still and let it pass through her without acting on it. because she was 24 years old and she had never once in her life acted on an impulse toward someone who had not first chosen her, and she was not going to start now, and certainly not here. Then stop, she said, gently. When you're ready, stop protecting them. He held her gaze. It will cost you, he said. Not a question. It already is. He looked away first, out the window, past her, into the thornwood. Something moved through his face, a long, slow shift, like a tide going out, and when it settled he looked older and more tired and more real than any version of himself she'd seen yet. There is a council session tomorrow, he said. The senior Sylvain. They'll want a report on your presence here, the intruder, the archive breach. You'll be expected to attend as the human representative. She registered the change in direction and accepted it. Some things needed to be set down before they could be picked up correctly. Understood. The council will not be uniformly welcoming. I didn't imagine they would be. Some of them, he stopped. Started again. There are those among us who believe the hostage exchange was a mistake. That your presence here is a contamination. That whatever you carry in your blood is better left dormant than activated. She held this. And you. He looked at her. For a moment the window light was across him, pale morning gold, the kind that doesn't flatter or soften, the kind that simply shows what's there, and what was there was a man who had been in a war for so long he'd forgotten what he was fighting toward, and who was looking at her with something in his eyes that was careful and tired and something else she still had no name for. I think, he said, that you were born knowing something this entire situation is trying to tell us and no one has given you the language for it yet. A pause. I intend to give you the language. The resonance in her chest rang like a struck bell. She held very still. All right, she said. Quietly. Then we start tomorrow. He nodded. Once. She moved toward the door, and then stopped, hand on the frame, because there was one more thing. Erevan. He looked up. When the person you've been protecting shows themselves, and they will, because people who have been moving pieces for 3 months don't stop now, I need you to promise me something. What? That you will not protect them at the cost of the truth. She held his gaze. Whatever the truth is, whatever it costs the two of us. The gray-green of his eyes went through several colors she still didn't have names for. Yes, he said. One word. Absolute. She left. In the corridor she pressed her back to the wall for exactly 3 seconds, hand flat against the cold stone, and let herself feel the full weight of everything, the letter against her sternum, her mother's handwriting, Maren's broken ribs, the ancient blood humming in her like a second heartbeat, and the look on Erevan's face when he said I intend to give you the language like it was a vow. 3 seconds. Then she pushed off the wall and walked back toward her quarters, and the thornwood breathed beneath the citadel, and somewhere in the archive an old translation was nearing its final page. End of chapter 4.